Patrick, thank you very much for having me as a guest today.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you do a lot. We could have you on for a variety of topics in the future. So let's get right into quiet quitting. Talk to me a little bit about what quiet quitting is and what made you get into it.
Well, quiet quitting is a fairly new phenomenon that's been around, that's come to the boiling point, meaning it's in the national media, I would say in the past several years. Quiet quitting basically is when an employee decides just to do the bare minimum of their jobs. Nothing more, nothing less. Whatever the job description is, that's what they're going to do. They're not going to do anything more.
Sure. And you may have mentioned this. So is this something new, would you say, or has it existed in the workforce for a while and then it's just kind of a new term?
I think it's probably a combination of both, but I think the younger generation has brought it to the forefront. I think we're going through, I'm not going to call it a revolution in the workforce, in the marketplace, but I am going to call it an evolution. Previous generations were needed to work, and they did what they had to do to support families, pay bills. Now the younger generation, for the most part, may be living at home. There is no one size fits all. So if they're not really happy with their job, they may want to say, look, I'm just going to do a slowdown. But you kind of shoot yourself in the foot with that kind of methodology and thinking, because you go to work to make money, and if you're good at what you do, you're going to make more money because you're going to get promoted. And if you get promoted, you're going to make even more money to enjoy your personal lifestyle. So it kind of doesn't make sense to have that kind of work ethic or lack of work ethic or that type of work behavior, because at the end of the day, you're just really hurting yourself and hurting eventually the company as well, the organization.
No, it's an interesting approach, and honestly, it sounds to me it's like a passive aggressive way of saying you're not happy or you're not fulfilled with your job.
Yeah, exactly. And again, nobody's winning. You're not winning as the employee. The company's not winning because they're not getting the maximum productivity. So it's really a lose-lose situation.
Oh yeah, definitely. So let's talk about some pros and cons of quiet quitting from the perspective of the employee, just to get a better understanding of what causes employees to do this type of thing.
Well, the cause is I suspect again, the mentality of I'm not happy here and I want a better working environment. Now, it's probably going to vary from person to person. And so what ends up happening is, since the person's not happy, they're gradually going into themselves. And as you mentioned, this could be a passive aggressive behavior. So the pros are, I'm not going to work as hard as I can be, if you call that a pro. The cons are, you're really limiting your career growth and your financial growth as well, because companies don't pay people just to sit around and do nothing. They pay people who are go-getters, make a difference, and further the company's goals and objectives. Again, when I use the word company, I mean any type of organizational structure that has goals. Obviously, company may refer to revenue, dollars and cents, but a nonprofit still has goals as well. So the concept is still the same.
And I wonder if there's an element of thinking that, if I quit, I'm not going to be able to collect unemployment. If I go through the motions and they eventually fire me, then at least there's some financial incentive to go on with
There
it.
could very well be, but again, you're being penny wise and dollar foolish, because
Yeah,
unemployment is really there as a stopgap. No one in unemployment is really breaking any records at the bank. Financially, they're not turning the world around financially. So it's just a stopgap, and that could be a reason. The challenge is we don't really know what's going on in people's mind, but generationally. Um, the challenges are work ethic, and with every generation, I'm not going to say there's a different work ethic, but there may be an adjustment to the work ethic and expectations of what work really represents. What's the obligation as an employer to an employee? Things like working conditions. There's some companies, for instance, in the Silicon Valley, provide their employees with breakfast and pick up dry cleaning and so on and so forth. And a smaller company may not be able to do that, or it's just not the corporate culture to do that. Some companies, and it's not a bad thing. You dare the work. That's why they call it work. You go to work to put in X amount of time and produce, and you're rewarded by your salary. If you're a go-getter, you'll make more money and you're promoted. So this quiet quitting mentality, may be more of a new generational aspect. But at the end of the day, nobody really wins with the quiet quitting.
Right. And history repeats itself. Previous generations have gone through similar changes of hand as the younger generation starts to take over in terms of employment in the workforce. There's always going to be a little bit of a transitional period, so maybe we're experiencing some of that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm leaning more towards calling it an evolution versus a revolution. I think we saw that in the turn of the century, in the 1800s to the 1900s, where they instituted a 5-day work week and a 40-hour work week. And I think with the new millennials and the new millennium, we're seeing an evolution. Now there's even talk, and it's proven to be successful in Europe, specifically in England, moving to a 4-day work week. And they're showing that a 4-day work week, those folks are producing as much or even more than they were with a regular 5-day work week. So we may be seeing that come to the United States. It could be, 4 days at 10 hours a day and you got 3 days off, you know. And if you look at the big picture, you could have theoretically two shifts. You could have a Monday through Thursday shift, and you could have a Wednesday through Sunday shift. So a company, an organization could be working 7 days a week with everyone happy and getting even more productivity, production, and revenue. So we'll see how it all really maps out and transitions.
Reimagining the workforce a little bit, what
Right.
a typical work week looks like. Yeah, definitely. So different ways and causes to employees quiet quitting. To go back to that, coming up to me is like burnout, low pay, lack of opportunities for advancement, feeling disrespected at work, child care issues, flexibility, not having good benefits. I could see all of this contributing, but I come back to the simple solution of, okay, let's find another opportunity. Let's not just stagnate and sit here until it gets better, which that's almost like the definition of insanity.
Well, exactly. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Now, what you just mentioned, they could be a part or all of what you just mentioned. But, again, no one's winning. It's a lose, lose, lose situation. The employee loses, the employer loses, and the organization loses by this quiet quitting mentality. It isn't like, okay, I'm going to do this and it's a good thing. At the end of the day, it's a loss all the way around the board because it doesn't make sense. Most people go to work to earn a living. Obviously, you want to go to work and make more money. That's why you're going to work. And also in the big picture, chances are you're not going to work just for that one job and retire. You're going to be working in the workforce 10, 20, possibly 30 years. So why would you want to stagnate yourself from the beginning and not be productive, especially if your company is showing you opportunities to grow? And usually with career growth, 9 times out of 10 comes financial growth. They're going to pay you more, plain English.
Exactly. And the inverse is also true. I mean, this exists within employers, and we're calling that quiet firing. So talk to me a little bit about the opposite, or the approach from employers that are trying to quiet fire or quiet terminate.
Well, employers are always concerned about liability. So what ends up happening is if they see an employee is not productive or really doesn't want to participate, they get to the point where we'll just phase the person out. When they get to the point, hopefully they'll leave on their own. Because liability and being sued has always been an issue. Now, as time goes by, it's becoming even more of an issue. It's just bad press. It's bad productivity. It's bad business practices. So it's easier if the person just gets up and leaves on their own. So, but again, even with quiet quitting, who wins? You have an employee waiting to leave. How long is it going to take for this person to quiet quit? Or resign? You don't know. So you're losing all that productivity. Again, lose, lose, lose. The employer loses, the employee loses, and the organization loses. So it's a tactic, unfortunately, that's been around for quite some time, even when I was in corporate work. Many employers, again, do not want to risk, lawsuits and bad press, etc. So,
Yeah, the employer's operating from a more legal perspective,
right,
HR perspective, branding perspective. They'd rather an employee leave than have any bad publicity come back to them
right.
about why the employee left or was it our fault, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
Okay. So my next question is this a problem due their way, figuring out what work looks like to them and what, in turn, what the workforce looks like in the future?
I think it's a combination of a couple of things. I think we have a generation that, for the most part, has lived their life behind a screen, be it a telephone, a computer. You have an older generation that really expects you to have a work ethic when you come to work. So I think the common bridge would be communication. Unfortunately, I think we have an issue where both parties need to meet in the middle, and that might be an issue. And I think that's the answer: communication. The quiet quitter needs to communicate. I'm not really happy here. The quiet employer who wants to get rid of the quiet quitter needs to say what's going on here. And I think the lack of communication. I think we have a generation that, unfortunately, as I mentioned, has grown up behind a screen. And realistically, life doesn't always go just behind a screen. There's interaction face to face, and it's a different skill set. It's a different skill set. Even what we're doing now, granted, we're communicating, but I can't completely see your body posture. You can't completely see mine. What's really going on. And really, the art and science of communication, I think, has been hindered with the advent of technology. I think we've progressed in technology, but we've lost in the art and science of communication. And communicate.
I always think about our dependence on technology almost making us dumber in a sense. And what I always come to is our GPS on our phones. I couldn't tell you how to drive to New Jersey.
Right.
I couldn't look at a map and figure that out. I type it into my phone. But
Right.
years and years ago, you had to figure it out. You had to open the map and kind of use those skills outside of the technology in your pocket.
No, I agree. I think what's happened is, again, we're just talking in broad terms here, broad brush. I think the younger generation sees technology as the tool. The older generation sees it as a tool in your toolbox of working. Okay, if you can't communicate, verbally, in the written word, LOL is not a complete sentence. You know what I mean? So you really need to formulate thoughts that people understand. And I think we're seeing a little drifting of the way. And I think management may have to introduce new tools to help the younger folks communicate better. And that from public speaking, getting in front of people, which is another lost, dying art and science. Again, the art is knowing how to speak in a group of individuals. The science is speaking in a productive manner that people walk out of that meeting or lecture or public talk saying, "Oh, I know more than I did before this person started talking." That's the science part. The art is people enjoy it and remember it. It doesn't matter whether it's business or personal, business development or personal development. People say that person spoke today, and I remember what he said, and I enjoyed listening to that person. And texting doesn't do that. Emails doesn't do that. To a degree, teleconferencing does that. But again, there's more involved in this.
Yeah, that human-to-human connection is
Without question, without a doubt.
Yeah, and how do we get, so we have the older generation, the boomers, and the younger millennials, and even the younger generations. How do we figure out to meet in the middle, where both kind of come together, whereas instead of the stubborn communication and lack thereof, I should say, how do we find common ground and evolve as a workforce?
Well, I think we need, the area of supervision and management is the grease between the wheels. And I think we need management to be understanding of the fact that this younger generation is very intelligent, but needs some assistance in the area of interpersonal skills. And management needs to understand that and have classes and workshops and meetings on how to communicate better with your employees. This isn't a bad thing. I mean, the older generation called it, the $10 word was effective executive communication, and that's a fancy word for knowing how to communicate with people in a manner that everyone gets it, and not LOL, smiley face, and me trying to figure out, what are you telling me? What are you, the only thing that saves me personally, I spent 20 years in the technology industry. So I was one of the pioneers. I'm a dot-com refugee, so I've been around since to date myself, you know, floppy disks, and things of that nature. Since the year of the flood, basically, I learned punching cards. So the point I'm trying to make there was, you know, LOL started meaning one thing in, when I first started getting a mobile phone. Now it means 10 different things. So the point being, it may be time to get back to the basics of really communication in the workplace. Um, how do you interface with people? How to write emails? How to do basic public speaking? Personally, you work at some place, other than a factory, even in a factory. Now, factories aren't the factories of when I grew up, when you do repetitive work. Factories become more complex and complicated, and you need to communicate with your team members. So public speaking skills, writing skills. And I think it may be time to get back to basics so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, again, I think it comes back to a compromise to a certain extent,
Right.
knowing the strengths and the pros from each generation and meeting in the middle to figure out how we can operate from a healthy perspective.
Yeah, without question. I mean, let's face it, the world is technology, and it will continue to evolve into our social, business, our professional lives, our personal lives. So that there has to be that balance. It's always about balance of making everyone happy. And I think the younger generation can learn from the older generation. Conversely, the older generation can learn from the younger generation. So that's where you get your win-win-win situation. Everybody wins: the employee, the employer, and the organization.
Exactly. Okay, so closing the door on the quiet quitting and quiet firing, what would be your advice to employers facing challenges with some of their employees quiet quitting, or vice versa, employees experiencing their employers kind of trying to quiet fire them?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, I think communication is the key. You really need a team of both sides to really start understanding what is the problem here. Why are you slowing down? Is it professional? Is it personal? Is it a combination of both? What can we fix? What can we not fix? What areas are we willing to fix? What areas are we not willing to fix? But I believe it all starts with the communications. Once parties shut down professionally and or personally, then you're in trouble, because what ends up happening is we're not mind readers here on both sides of the fence, on both sides of the desk. We're not mind readers, and unfortunately, perception is reality. If I perceive you're not happy and you're not producing, then and my perception may be totally wrong of what's going on with you. It could be you're used to as an employee, you're used to having a computer on your desk, and now you come to work for me, you don't have one, and you're saying, well, this is like Stone Age, you know. Um, so conversely, an employer may say, look, we expect you here at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock means 8 o'clock, doesn't mean 8:05, and we're used to doing things with paper and 3-part copies, and et cetera, et cetera. So communication always is the issue. Most of the time it starts with communication or lack of, and then you really go from there.
Sure, sure. Okay, it's really interesting stuff. I'm glad we could have a conversation about it. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but I don't want to keep you too long. How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more? And anything else you'd like to plug or share about your business?
Well, thank you very much for that. I recently wrote a book called Life Beyond the Pandemic. So that helps people who have lost their livelihoods, be it their jobs, small businesses, or combinations of both, to find their true life purpose. And it takes people from the spiritual to the practical, whether they want to get a new job or start their own business. And the good thing about the modern day age is we have people, you can do both. Obviously the word is a side hustle, and you can have both. So that book takes people from the practical to the spiritual, and they can get a free chapter of the book on my website called lifebeyondthepandemic.com. And for my other business, Metropolitan Small Business Coaching, where I work with small business owners, that's metrosmallbusinesscoaching.com. And also, there's a boatload of YouTube videos that will assist people with resources on my websites and on the YouTubes, to give them resources to move forward in their lives, both on a professional development level and on a personal development level.
Very cool. We'll put episode. Oreste, thank you again for coming on. It was really a pleasure talking with you and learning some more about quiet quitting and quiet firing. Thanks again.
Well, thank you for having me, and have a good day.
Okay, hold on. It's give me a, there we go. It was fighting me then. All right. Yeah, where are you, Patrick?
No, I just got the word. Great, your recording was fully up.
Excellent. And Rusty, you should get the same.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Great job.
Thanks.
Great job. Yeah.
Okay.
Everything sound good?
Yep.
Yep.